Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Dave Schjott. I'm a sociologist here at the college. Nothing is magical that you're going to hear or see today. It's all sort of common sense things that I think about in terms of reaching professional and personal best in your life. And so as we sort of go through this, you'll hear some ideas that help shape my 12 strategies. One is motivation and work ethic are very much clearly tied together when we talk about success in life. You have to like what you're doing, you have to have a strong work ethic, you have to like the people you work with, and you have to be highly motivated to be successful in the choices and things that you do. That happens through determination and focus. I'm sort of a pathway person each and every day. I sort of have an idea of what I want to accomplish, and I try to be determined. I'm an early worker rather than a late worker. I like to get in early, I like to get things knocked out, and that's just how I live in my own skin more comfortably. I often rely on these two people more than, ironically, and Tim. I'm in a room of number two. My success depends on other people around me. I'm an expert in a few things, but not all things. And so I depend on, Maria's bailed me out of 1,000 things, Heather's bailed me out, Tim's bailed me out. But I think the beauty of that is that it's reciprocal. Everything that we do, that we give to others or we ask to others, we have to give back. And I think successful people, whenever we talk about determination, the first thing that people know, successful people know, is that they do not stop when minor obstacles are in their way. They persevere, they push through, they find another way to make it happen. Secondly, they design methods to reach those goals. And I think everyone needs to have reachable goals. I used to work in healthcare, and we would always make these elaborate goals, and they were never reachable. So we never got to experience any real success in the truest meaning of design because they were not reachable goals. They were impractical. So I love life goals. I like things to be things that we can easily reach and feel good about ourselves and feel good with our self-talk. I think that successful people strive to be excellent in everything they do. I don't know any other way to do it, right? I mean, you should strive for excellence. Doesn't mean that you are excellent in everything you do. We should strive for it. We should strive to do the right things, to make it better than the others, to go one extra step. And then they remind them regularly of what's important in their lives. And you have to define that for yourself, whether it's your kids, whether it's your love of religious life, whether it's your love of God, whether it's planting flowers in the yard. You have to find that place that's important to you, that reminds you about why you're motivated and why you have a work ethic to have these desired outcomes. I just think those are intrinsically tied together. We talk about mindset all the time in mental health, and we talk about how people view the world through their attitude. And so sometimes people forget that the attitude that needs adjusting may be yours, right? It may be you that are the problem in an organization, or maybe you in your department has a problem. I like solutions focused. I don't like dwelling on problems other than trying to find a solution. I'll tell you a quick little story. I don't like to tell in a short period today, but I'll keep moving. When I was in healthcare for a number of years in management, I would have meetings where if you have an expertise in something, I need you to solve it for me because I don't have knowledge and expertise over everything in the hospital environment. So if you're a chair or a supervisor or whatever we call you, I need you to say, this has occurred and it continues to occur. And I'm going to look at you, Maria, and I'm going to say, well, what are the two things that we can do to solve this? You give me some ideas about how to solve it. So I like the solutions-focused attempt to sort of dealing with life challenges. Belief system shifts. There was a book published in the early 2000s about how sometimes we have to take where we are and learn from other people to change the way that we see the world around us. Sometimes folks that we depend on, we care about, that we trust, will help us make that belief system shift. So in other words, somebody that could be incredibly negative all the time can actually learn from someone who's positive focused, who looks at everything in a positive light. And then lastly, in this slide about attitude, I just love the idea of doing just a little bit more than doing a little bit little, right? I'd rather you try a little extra time. I'd rather you make one more phone call. I'd rather you check the email one more time. I'd rather you reach out one more time, because I think, especially in what we do in terms of education, oftentimes students want to know what's the minimum they have to do in order to be successful. And I always tell them, don't ask about the minimum, talk about doing more than little. And I want you to do one extra thing. Give me 2 extra references. Give me 1 more citation. Work harder at giving me a little bit more than just settling for mediocre. Because I'm not a big fan of mediocre. I'm a fan of excellence and striving for it. Dress initiatives, right? Anytime we talk about how we feel in our own skin, anytime we talk about personal and professional sort of life, I'm often reminded of probably one of the most famous psychologists in the history of the world is Philip Zimbardo. Zimbardo talked about how when you've never met someone ever, within the first 7 seconds of just seeing someone non-verbally or hearing them engage in conversation, we make a first impression in 7 seconds. That's how fast our brain calculates. So you say, well, how does that happen? Your brain stores millions and millions of bits of information. And so your brain is like an old-fashioned card catalog. And so it does a quick search. When someone comes into your realm of focus, it does a card catalog search for something that resembles this, or it connects to that voice, or that behavior, or that dress. And we make impressions based upon that. Now, Zimbardo's research also found that after you've made an impression, positive or negative, it's going to take 3 interactions with that person to even begin changing your initial 7-second impressions. That's how powerful they are. So make sure that when you sort of listen to those impressions, and by the way, many times those first impressions can often be quite right from time to time, because your brain, again, stores that information. And so it sort of relies on those commonalities. A couple things about nonverbal things when we talk about initiatives. We're presenting ourselves each and every day, right, with so much of who we are, and how we dress, and the eye contact that we use, and the smiles that we use, and the engagement that we use says so much about how you see the world in your own skin and how you project that to others. I have a couple of 4 simple rules when we talk about sort of dress initiatives. One is, would you guys mind if I sit about that skill?
Go ahead.
One of the things I talk about is cleanliness. There's just not an excuse for not being clean, right? I mean, we can go to the Dollar Tree and buy 3 bars of soap for $1.25. Cleanliness is important. Neatness is important. And I don't even know what respectfully conservative means in my brain, but I know what it means to me as I see the world, right? I think you can still have expression of self. I think you can still present yourself in such a way that doesn't scream, look at me, look at me, look at me all the time. And I think that being a professional in a professional world, I think that's important to sort of think about cleanliness, neatness, respectfully conservative, and dress appropriately for the institution or the engagement that you're working in. I think those are critically valuable. If you're going to be successful, you have to acknowledge that you're always in the people business, always. It never stops, right? So you're always a customer, you're always a consumer. I can't go anywhere. I mean, nowhere. I've been teaching at this college 25 years. I can't go anywhere without someone recognizing me. Dr. Schjott, right? We hear it all the time. And so the people business means, even with my role of being an instructor, 5 minutes, 5 years, 5 days, I might now bump into you and you're in a position to help me do something, right? So we're always in the people business, and that means you're representing your family, you're representing your employer, you're representing your colleagues, and you're always speaking volumes about yourself because everyone is a potential customer. Can't go anywhere without thinking about that mindset, that we're always in the people business. Everything that we do has engagement with other people. And these stories that we have, these relationships that we have, these contacts that we build, sometimes can be tremendously powerful as we see the scope and nature of what we do sort of day to day. I learned this pretty early in my life in management about responsibility. You can't teach it. You just can't teach people to be responsible. You have to give them the power to be decision makers. You have to give people the freedom and the trust to make decisions on their own. And I always say that everyone in this room somebody's given you the authority to make decisions. Somebody gave you the leadership responsibility. We didn't get here by magic. And so responsibility cannot be taught. It has to be given. And so part of being a successful leader means we empower people to make decisions. And we do that by giving them confidence to do it. And if it means baby steps, it means baby steps. If it means a big chunk, it means a big chunk. But empowering is an awesome thing that we can do to help people find their own pathway. And once you empower someone, I learned this again in my past lives and doing other things. Once you empower somebody, you have to stick by them. Once you give them the responsibility to do something, even if they fail or it's not perfect, we still stick by them because it's on the learning curve. It's what life's all about, right? I'm never going to be perfect, ever. So we're constantly sort of sticking by people, even with fault, even with encouragement, even with forgiveness that you talked about when we first got up here today. Never miss an opportunity to allow other people to lead. It's perfectly fine to delegate and let others make a choice to lead. And I always say, ask for leadership. What are you good at? What do you feel comfortable at? I'm not going to say, what do you want to do? I'm going to say, what are you comfortable at? What are you really good at? And somebody's going to say, well, I'm really good at this. I'm not really good at that. And that I absolutely don't want to do, right? I know one of my limitations. I don't like asking people for money, right? I don't like it. I don't want to sell candy bars. I don't want to, when kids are in school and they want you to do all this stuff to fundraise, and that's just not how I'm wired. I don't want to do that part of it. I'll do other things, but don't put me in terms of asking for that part of that. Help people find their own way. I think one of the most beautiful things is I always talk about teaching destinations, not maps. Right? I want to say, here's where we are, here's where I want you to be. You find how we're going to get there. You figure it out. I don't want to be that rigid person that says, here's the map, you're going to start here and you're going to get there, and here's exactly how you're going to go. I don't like that view because we all sort of have our different ideas about our right brain, left brain, that creative part versus that mechanical part. And we always get to the same place, but we sometimes get there differently. Delegating responsibility. Some people don't have difficulty with it. I'm not a good delegator, but I certainly am a good questioner. What do you feel comfortable in doing? What do you think your greatest strength is, and how we can, get to the common road to the common shore. And if you really want to talk about responsibility, I don't think there's a greater tool than leading by example. There's just not a greater tool, right? If you're going to be it's kind of like anything that you do, whether it's sports-minded, whether it's parental, whether it's leadership in a classroom, lead by example. Show the mirror of the way to get there. And we talk a lot in sociology about mirroring. That's why children are so impressionable, is because they're mirroring how they're being taught or raised. And so leading by example is a critically powerful tool to talk about responsibility and sort of giving people the decision-making power to be successful on their own. Any questions? I like just talking incessantly. So if you have anything to add or questions, please stop and let me know. So we know that about 2/3 of everything human beings communicate is mostly nonverbal, right? We use verbal language all the time, but what we're really doing is communicating nonverbally. So listen to what I call the messages, not just the words. So just showing someone love by tenderness, or touching their shoulder, or smile, or just an acknowledgement is so much more powerful than me just simply looking at Heather saying that I love you, right? It's the little things that we do to make that difference, right? And so I'm a still old-fashioned guy. I still write thank you notes. I do. I can't help it. I still write thank you notes. When I can send an email, I just think it's more intimate. It's more insightful to put pen to paper and to do it that way. So watch nonverbal cues. Watch how people communicate by what they're not saying with words. And so oftentimes that involves sensitivity, right? If you know someone in the workplace well enough and you can just tell nonverbally that today's not an exceptional day for them, I don't want you to go rogue and say, what's wrong with you? I mean, just a simple acknowledgement. Hey, Tim, if you need any help with anything today, let me know. Just an acknowledgement, just that simple acknowledgement of the nonverbal can mean so much to someone in how we live our lives. Be sensitive to what people are not telling you, because not everyone's going to be open disclosure. Oftentimes people have challenges that they bump into on the road of life. We should always strive to treat everyone as equal, but that's I'm a sociologist. That's dang hard. It's a great premise, but every single person, people tell me all the time, I'm not biased, I'm not judgmental of people. And I just think that that's not the truth. I think we have biases about music, and we have biases about lifestyle, we have biases about everything, right? So strive to treat everyone as equal, but at least have enough common sense about yourself, about where your limitations may lie. That's the challenge, is when you say, hey, wait a minute, I need to take a step back from this because I just had an irrational thought or something that wasn't kind. So I can't change it necessarily, but I can acknowledge it and strive to change it. Give people space and opportunity to express themselves. Some people are just thinkers. They're cognitive of their role. And so where you and I may be very quick, we respond quickly and we're comfortable living in our skin with the decisions we make, oftentimes other people need to figure it out. They just need to sort it out, sort of put the puzzle pieces on the table and try to sort out the edges first. You know what I mean? They're not as quick to solve that. And then when we talk about messages, about nonverbal, watch things like your posture and your inflection and your tone, facial features, eye contact. All of those things are critical. And we fail at them all the time. We just do. But again, the solution is acknowledging that we fail at it sometimes. And so if you can catch yourself with that inflection or raising your voice, at least acknowledging it within yourself. And I struggle with this all the time because sometimes I have a short fuse about some things. I'm not very patient with things. I struggle with that all the time. And I try to apologize because sometimes I do lose my patience. But acknowledging it is part of the battle of being successful or being healthy. So watch your posture, your inflection, your tone, things like facial features, eye contact. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Lie to Me. It was on television for a number of years, and that whole show was about how people communicate so much by microtells, they call them, by little looking away at a question, or looking back, or flinch, or closing your eyes, or slumping your shoulders. It's really quite good if you ever get a chance to watch that.
What was the name of the show?
Lie to Me, L-I-E, to me, T-O-M. I can't remember the actor's name. Do you remember what his name was called?
I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. So the whole thing is about how to discover people that are being misleading, mistruthful. And they're called microtells, little things that people do. Pauses, deep breaths, eye contact. Communication is so important, but I learned this in undergraduate. I had a professor say, words have no meaning, people do. What's that? Did you find it?
Yeah, I recognize the guy. He was in a bunch of Tarantino movies.
Yes. He was the one that said bunny.
Yeah,
bunny.
Yeah.
Yeah, bunny. But communication is critical, but I've learned that words have no meaning, people do. what does that mean? It was hard for me when I was, a young undergrad, and a communication professor was saying that just because people use a phrase or language, and so I put that there, just because you said it doesn't mean they understand it or get it. And just because you said it doesn't mean people agree with you. So oftentimes we have these meanings, these words that people use, and we just blurt them out and assume that everybody gets it, everybody understands it. And it made sense to me. I remember I was 18 years old in a college algebra class, and I remember the professor came in. It was an auditorium, 300 seats, 300 students, packed. I was the first one to go to college in my family. I didn't know anything. And I go into this classroom experience, and this little guy comes out, right? And he starts writing on the board. And he had a very thick Indian accent. And he said, if you want to place the integer above the mean of the decimal, move the point. And he was doing all this stuff. And I saw people doing this. I'm looking around. Marie, I'm the guy doing this. Hey, man, you got a pen, extra pen, pencil or something? Do you have, can I get a sheet of paper too? Went right across the campus and dropped class. And the lady that dropped me, Tim, the lady that dropped me, said, why are you taking this class? And I said, because it was on the list of the algebra. She said, no, you're a social science major. You have your own math department in social science. You're taking the algebra class that's in the math department. That's not what you want. So I scheduled the class with the lady. I don't remember her name now. I can see her in my head. First day of class, Tim, she said, hello, class. If you have one pen and you add another pen to it, how many pens do we have? I was like, I'm in the right place. This is awesome. Look, just because you said it doesn't mean people agree. Just because you said it doesn't mean they understand. And so I always use math as my example because I struggle with it. I struggle with it my whole life. And so I need to know how to navigate that. So if you're in the communication business, give clear messages. Be very clear, be forthright. Tell people exactly what you have on your mind. In mental health, we often see people with tangential thinking where they start on one track and then they have a tangential thought and they start talking about something else. And so we're constantly sort of reeling them back in to reminding them about what the initial issue was when we first started. So part of that is what I call one issue at a time. You can compound them, but let's deal with them one at a time. It's easier for us to deal with one issue at a time. Give clear messages, stay on task, encourage feedback, but be careful when you're asking for feedback because you must be patient. Some people are not forthright. They're not adept at sharing their deep feelings. They're not adept at sharing their fears. Because most often what we see in the classroom is fear, not success. We see fear, right? One of the worst things that we've ever done in K through 12 education was introduce calling students to the board to work something. Because students learn two things. One is that they're terrified they're going to be called on. And secondly, they found out very, very quickly to avoid that embarrassment in front of their peers, they act out. So we've created classrooms full of acting out children that I'm going to get negative attention rather than positive attention because I can't work the problem. And we still do the same thing every day in public schools. So stay on task, encourage feedback, but always be patient. And again, I'm going to go back to my same thing, never be afraid to ask for help. Sometimes the smartest bulb in the pack, the brightest bulb in the pack, is the person sitting next to you across the room from you. And if you just ask for help, you just ask for help. And that's why oftentimes parents spend a fortune trying to find good tutors for their kids, and the right person can be magical for someone in terms of helping them learn something that's complicated for them.
Can I add something on that? When I worked in healthcare, the company I worked for at the time, everybody went through like a profile to find out what type of why is my mind going blank?
The Myers-Briggs, perhaps?
Yeah, well, kind of like Myers-Briggs,
Yeah.
but it was color. It's a personality test.
Yeah, sure.
So we had to figure out, and so then our color would be like on our badge. And so when you walked up, the whole point was to try to address the person based on how they're communicated to by their personality. So like green was somebody who wanted facts and they wanted them quick and they wanted you to go on.
Yeah.
So you walk up and you say, oh, they have green, we need to have this conversation, I need to be respectful of them, you know, and so it was kind of, you know, and if they were blue, then you wanted to kind of drop in some kind of like, you know, a heartfelt thing into it to help motivate them. So, you know, as leaders, it was really helpful because it was like, okay, I need to address this person where they are, you know.
Yeah, we've sort of all been there where we're trying to sort out the dynamics of human personalities. Some people are, you know, are very difficult to communicate with. It's just the nature of who they are. And we've all known those people where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to crack the shell to get into this communication. And then others were just like, you know, it's all out there, too much information. But yeah, communication is so critical. The nonverbal stuff is just so powerful too. And again, I'll stick with my saying too, just because he said it doesn't mean they get it. And just because he said it doesn't mean people agree. So be mindful of that. Prioritize to make life simple. I'm a stack person. If you've ever been in my office, I have sort of little baby stacks of stuff. And so, but I don't want anybody messing with my stacks, right? I have sort of things that I have to accomplish right now. I have things that are sort of longer term, and I have things that I'm hoping never brought up again, that they disappear. I know people in this room that make to-do lists, and I will always tell people that are to-do list people to actually put some things on there that are easily accomplished, like make coffee. Yes, right. Make sure the door's unlocked. Awesome, right? Because if you've got heavy duty lifting on that list of things to do, you should have some things that make you feel good about living in your own skin. So we can't constantly bombard our brains with impossible tasks to complete in a single day, Heather. And so we build some things in there that's easily accomplished, right? I'm a check-off person. I sort of like to think about things. I don't necessarily write them down, but I've got things every day that I want to accomplish. And sometimes some of them are more meaningful or more important to get knocked out early, others are later. Focus on what you do best and be consistent with that. My ego is huge. I am. I'm a good instructor. I'm good at what I do. My students learn. And I'm so cocky that I believe I would put my students in an intro in a class, and you can test them against any other student in America, and I think they'll do just fine. Everybody gets to the same place in a different sort of way. So I have this idea about being consistent in how I teach. There's certain things that I think are valuable in terms of those lessons and being a professional. There is a mission to my madness. I'd like to do things the way I like to do things. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It means it helps me be successful in my skin. Don't forget to prioritize your life. In other words, when we're prioritizing, don't forget about your family, right? Don't forget them. Don't take them for granted. Don't misuse or mistreat colleagues in the workplace. Don't forget about your friends, and don't forget about doing things that make you feel healthy living in your skin. Right? And if it means digging a hole in the yard and planting plants, then dig a hole in the yard and plant plants. If it means sawing a piece of lumber and making something beautiful out of it, then do it, because you need that for your mental health. And other people, it may be something as simple as taking a hot bath and reading a book, giving yourself 10 minutes of grace, 10 minutes of freedom to sort of do something that rejuvenates you in how you see the world around you. Trust your intuition. Again, I talked about Zimbardo and some of his data. My mom used to say an elephant always leaves footprints. And so what she meant by that, my mom was a very smart lady, so she would say sometimes people come into your world, but it's an elephant. And you can tell it was an elephant because there's still tracks through the yard, right? So sometimes they present differently than who they actually are. I didn't realize in sociology we actually have a phrase for that, and that's by Charles Horton Cooley, who said we we have different senses of self. So I can present to Tim anybody I choose to present to Tim. It's not the real me, right? And he called it the looking glass self. We can bend the looking glass to be anybody I want you to believe that I am, because I'm not the same person, right? I remember Jeffrey Dahmer, one of the most prolific serial killers, and everybody they interviewed in his network of people said, he is the nicest young man. He is the kindest. He says hello and yes sir and no ma'am. He brings my garbage can in from the street. He sometimes helps me down the stairs. Looking glass self. He reflected to what others wanted to see and had that secret sort of things. Initial impressions are often correct, not always. And we talked about Zimbardo. But your job is to investigate fact and fiction. Your job is sort of to uncover, if something doesn't feel right intuitively, then test it. Check it out, right? Figure it out on your own. Don't rely on someone else to tell you what's true or not true. Because ultimately, you have to live with your own decision making. Most of us will sort of hide behind something that we don't want to face up to. Look, I'm the world's worst at this. I'll admit it. I don't like conflict. I just don't like it. I leave, right? When something's conflictual for me, or I'm out of balance, my cognitive dissonance is out of balance, I leave. Is that healthy? No. But I don't know how to do it anything other than what's in my own skin. I'll get around to resolution later, but in order for me to live in my own skin, I have to deal with conflict the way I deal with it. Does that make sense? So don't ignore things that you have to do for the good health of your own brain. Don't confuse work with family. If you want to be successful, I don't know about your family, but my family's a mess. I'm not a big believer in saying we're one big happy family here, because I think a better concept in the workplace, being personal and professional best, is the idea of teamwork. Everyone playing a role, we know what our job is. Tim's very good at what he does, and that's why we rely on Tim to do his job. And Tim relies on Dave Schjott to do my job. But we also need players that can pinch hit, can role play, that can step in and do something that they're not accustomed to doing, but they have skill sets that allow them to be professionally secure in their own skin, to sit out this one, to pinch hit, to do whatever. And there needs to be a constant balance between these ideas of workplace, family, and friends. Make sure those are separate. That family shouldn't be in the workplace in terms of intimacies in the workplace. It's just not a good fit. Does that make sense? Now, of course, people bring their kids to work occasionally. I get it. I understand it. Maybe there's a hardship or some underlying issue. But that should not be a commonality. It should be an uncommon event. Yeah.
Season with your son, how does that correlate?
Don't see him. He works on the other side of campus. The only time I see him, I'll see him at 4:30 when he's working on his master's stuff, and I'm probably going to be proofreading something. I don't know. But yeah, he's in another building on the other side of campus. Yeah, I mean, I think all of these challenges are real, and I would like to think many of us are very close friends, but it's still a workplace. It's not family. Does that make sense? I'm trying to be good stewards of your time. I love celebrations. I think celebrating small victories is something we miss in our culture. A lot of other cultures do a way better job, a much better job of celebrating small victories. So I like the teamwork concept in the workplace, celebrating being a part of the team. I like celebrating birthdays and anniversaries and promotions. I'm all about cupcakes and cake and stuff. I think that, in your business, there's nothing more impactful in sort of the history of religion in the world than food, breaking bread together, right? It builds a bond of fellowship and camaraderie and common purpose. So I'm all about celebrating. One of the things I had to learn that was a hard lesson, when I first started working in public mental health many years ago, I was part of the grant writing team. And I cannot tell you how many times we were sorely disappointed We didn't get it. We busted our butts. We worked hours and hours of endless time. And then we got that letter that said, just not good enough. I learned right away, that's when we celebrate the most. That's when we celebrate the most. It's when we don't win. Because guess what happens tomorrow? We're starting over. I've got to ask you again. We got to go to bat again. We have to work on this project together again, folks. So we've had disappointment. We had disappointment, but I'm hopeful that this time is the charm. And so I love the idea of celebrating whether we win or lose, and the idea of not taking anything for granted is a critical part of that. Celebrate the people that surround you now because they may not be here tomorrow. We just had an incident of that at this college recently, right? They're here, they're not here. So sort of be mindful of that because things can change very quickly.
Do they pass?
Yeah. Goals for success. I think that all of us sort of have these in the back of our mind, these weekly, monthly, yearly, long-term goals. I'm all about setting your sights on high bars, but it has to be reachable again. I'm going to go back to that again. You have to be able to reach some of these milestones or you won't be successful. Remind yourself of your life goals, and if it means sticking a sticky note on your wife's mirror in the bathroom to encourage her to be successful, then do that. Because those little bitty things matter. Those notes left on a mirror, those notes left on a seat, those notes left under a windshield wiper matter. Don't be afraid to acknowledge setbacks. Nothing is ever going to go exactly as planned. It's just not. And I've always said in my past, that's why I think God has a sense of humor. Right? It's constantly challenging you to figure out another destination, but we got to take a different route. Challenge those around you to help you reach your goals, right? And that means communication, right? If you're married or dating or whatever and you're in graduate school, then you offer help, but you also need to know when not to offer help, right? So know the nature and the character of the individuals that you're surrounded by. And never underestimate the first thing I said in the first slide, the power of perseverance. It's just an amazing thing to think about. Just keep chugging up the hill, man. Keep knocking on the door. Keep plowing the way. I always leave with a baker's dozen. So I do this at every single presentation I do. I end with this. Probably the golden rule is one of the most important lessons you'll ever learn in your life. Treat others like you'd like to be treated yourself. And second, don't be afraid to be a role model. I remember when, I can't remember the basketball player's name now, they said, I'm not a role model to kids. So I don't understand how you can't be a role model, right? I think modeling is what we do in sociology. It's what we do. Don't be afraid to model the way. Don't be afraid to seek the truth regardless of risk. Never be afraid to fight for what you believe in. Avoid gossip, hearsay, and innuendo. Encourage from the heart. And I like to think of myself as an 80%er. I shoot for 100 every day, but doggone it, if I can make 80, 8 out of 10, I think I'm pretty good. So that's my little 45-minute pathway to reaching personal and professional best. Conversation now for a few minutes. What was impactful? Did anything have meaning for you in reflection?
Yeah, so much. Very, very, I want to have more conversations with you. A lot of questions I have with different things you brought up.
Okay. Tim, any ideas?
Oh, that's a good baker's dozen that you've got there. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you on how it is difficult to treat people equally, and that is always a complicated thing, to do because there's just some people that you gel with,
Yes.
and that there's that connection, and then there's some people that no matter how hard you try, you don't, and it's like.
I agree.
It's like being respectful to that situation and that person,
Yeah.
and treating them with the same, I think, level of respect that you give to other people. But it's not an easy.
It's not
thing.
easy.
So.
Because we do come into the world with our own little bag of luggage, our own biases and our own belief systems. Some of it's religious, some of it's moral, ethical, some of it is legal, we come into the world with our different sets of luggage. And I was at a conference one time, and to illustrate sort of this point, the guy had all this luggage on the podium thing up there. And he called someone up and he said, you know, how many of you are divorced? And so he started adding all these pieces of luggage, and it weighed the person down because we all carry these parts of us that are not clearly understood, and some of those have biases that are built into the model. What do you guys think? Marie? That's a nonverbal cue. Very good. Heather?
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
You know,
Theo?
autistic, I struggle with the 8%, or the 90%, depending on, you said 2/3 today, I hadn't heard it that small, the nonverbals. Because it seems like people don't mean what they say and they don't say what they mean. And, one of the biggest things with counselors is, basically clarity on everything that's said. A great example was one day somebody said, "Where'd you come in at?" And I thought, well, I drove in the parking lot right there. So I pointed at my car. It was through a door, and the door happened to be locked that day. And if they would have just said, "You came through those doors?" And I said, "No, those doors are locked. I came through those doors."
Yeah.
But they thought I was lying because I was pointing at my car. And so, like you said, something that simple, being autistic, seems like I always go the opposite way of what they're thinking. And so, that's why I have a bunch of questions for you, but it's just.
So again, like, my past life in the therapeutic world, therapy, you have to keep doing what we call reflective listening, right? You have to constantly say, what I hear you saying is this, and help me if I'm wrong, right? And that's why I said you have to stay one task focused. So if you're coming in for marital issues regarding whatever, I need to keep you focused on that and not you telling me about the water pipe busting last week. And we're going to get to the water pipe in a minute. But let's go back to where we were at ground zero. So all those are great observations, and I'm not an expert at any of this. I mean, I even think sometimes I'm a terrible communicator, but I certainly try, right? Try. Well, thank you.
Your presentation was well thought out and very thorough, so.
Thank you. It's very kind.